Her billionaire husband said, "You're dying anyway, I need a healthy woman by my side." But the judge who walked into his bankruptcy hearing made him freeze in horror. All rise. The United States Bankruptcy Court for the Northern District of Illinois is now in session. The Honorable Judge Marlo Brennan presiding. Sterling Ashford stood in the small federal courtroom, his off-the-rack suit a far cry from the custom Italian wool he used to wear. His attorney, a nervous kid fresh out of law school, shuffled papers beside him. Sterling barely noticed. His eyes were fixed on the door behind the bench as it opened. And then his world stopped. She walked in wearing black judicial robes that made her look like an avenging angel. Hair pulled back in a sleek bun. Face healthy and glowing. Strong frame radiating power and authority. It was her. The woman he had left to die 8 years ago. "Be seated." Her voice carried the same authority her father's had. Cold. Commanding. Final. Sterling's legs gave out. He collapsed into his chair. His attorney caught his arm. "Are you okay?" The young lawyer whispered urgently. "That is." Sterling could barely form words. His throat had closed. His heart was trying to pound out of his chest. "That is my wife." "Your what?" "My ex-wife. The woman The woman who was supposed to die." Judge Marlo Brennan settled into her chair. Reviewed documents her clerk had placed before her. She had not looked at him directly yet. Had not acknowledged him at all. "We are here today for the initial hearing in the matter of Ashford Development Corporation's petition for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection." She flipped through papers with practiced efficiency. Debts totaling $47 million against assets valued at approximately $12 million. "Is that correct, Mr. Ashford?" He could not speak. Could not breathe. His attorney jumped in. "Yes, Your Honor. That is correct." Finally, she looked up. Directly at him. Her eyes. Those same eyes that had looked at him from a hospital bed 8 years ago when she was dying of cancer. When he had told her he needed a healthy woman. When he had walked out and left her to die alone. Those eyes now looked at him from a judge's bench with absolutely no recognition. No emotion. Nothing. Like he was a stranger. A case file. A problem to be efficiently resolved and forgotten. "Mr. Ashford." She said his name like it meant absolutely nothing. "Do you understand the proceedings today? Have you ever been told you are dying? Have you ever had the person who promised to love you forever abandon you at your weakest moment? What would you do if you survived against impossible odds and years later the person who left you ended up powerless before you, begging for mercy? If you have ever been counted out, underestimated, or left behind, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button right now because you need to see how this unfolds. And comment, what would you do if you were in her position? Would you show mercy or would you do exactly what she did? This is the story of Marlo Brennan. A woman who was told she had 6 months to live. A woman whose billionaire husband looked at her dying body and said she was not good enough anymore. A woman who decided that surviving would be the greatest revenge of all. Let me take you back to where it all began. To the moment that changed everything. The hospital room at Mercy General smelled like antiseptic and endings. It was October. The afternoon sun streaming through the window felt like an accusation against the dying. Marlo Ashford lay in the narrow bed, her body reduced to sharp angles beneath the thin hospital blanket. 29 years old. Stage 4 lymphoma. The oncologist's words still echoed in her mind with the finality of a death sentence. 6 months to live. Maybe less. She had been in this room for 3 weeks. Her husband Sterling had not visited in 3 days. Sterling Ashford. Real estate mogul. His face appeared on the covers of Forbes and Fortune. He commanded rooms with his presence. He owned half of downtown Chicago. He had promised to love her in sickness and in health. But sickness, apparently, had conditions. The door opened. Not a nurse this time. Him. He stood in the doorway. 6 feet 2 inches of tailored perfection in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly hospital bills. His dark hair was styled with the casual precision of someone who paid a professional to make it look effortless. He did not meet her eyes. Sterling. Marlowe's voice was threadbare. The chemotherapy had stolen its strength along with her hair, her energy, her certainty about anything. You came. He entered the room like he was entering a business meeting he wanted to leave. Stood at the foot of her bed rather than sitting in the chair beside it. The distance felt deliberate. Calculated. We need to talk. 4 words. That was all it took for Marlowe to know that her life was about to shatter in ways cancer never could. I have been thinking. Sterling's voice carried the practiced calm he used when delivering bad news to investors. About us. About our situation. Our situation. She almost laughed. As if her terminal diagnosis was a stock portfolio that had underperformed its projections. Marlowe, you are dying. The bluntness hit like a slap across her hollow cheeks. I mean, the doctors said 6 months. Maybe less. And I cannot. His jaw tightened. A muscle twitching with irritation. I cannot put my life on hold to watch you waste away. The machines monitoring her vitals started beeping faster. Her heart rate climbing. She could not breathe properly. I am 34 years old. Sterling continued as if reading from a script he had rehearsed in his car on the drive over. I have built an empire from nothing. I need a partner who can stand beside me at galas, at board meetings, at the life I have worked so hard to create. I need someone healthy. Someone who can give me children. Someone who is not dying. The cruelty of it was almost admirable in its efficiency. Like a surgeon cutting away diseased tissue without anesthesia. You are leaving me. She said it flatly. Not a question. A statement of fact. I am being realistic. He adjusted his cufflinks. A nervous tell she recognized from 4 years of marriage. We both know how this ends. You die and I am left picking up the pieces. Or I waste the next 6 months watching you deteriorate when I could be building my future. Our future was supposed to be together. Your future. Her voice cracked. Not our future. Your future. Our marriage was built on partnership, Marlowe. You were supposed to be my equal. Someone who elevated my social standing. The daughter of Judge Samuel Brennan was an excellent connection for someone like me. But now. He gestured vaguely at her frail body like it disgusted him. This is not what I signed up for. Judge Samuel Brennan. Her father. Dead for 3 years now from a heart attack at his bench. He had been Marlowe's hero. A federal judge who believed in justice and consequence and the idea that people eventually faced what they had done. If he could see this moment, he would have destroyed Sterling Ashford. I loved you. Marlowe whispered. Loved. Past tense. Sterling noted it with something like satisfaction. Exactly. So we are in agreement that this marriage is over. He pulled papers from his briefcase with the smooth efficiency of someone who had planned this conversation down to the minute. Divorce papers. Already drawn up. Already signed by him. I have been generous. He set them on her bedside table, careful not to touch her. Not to let his fingers brush against her skin like she might contaminate him with death. You keep the townhouse. A settlement that will cover your medical bills and then some. All I ask is that you sign quickly so we can both move forward. Move forward. As if she had anywhere to move except toward a grave. Marlowe stared at the papers. At his signature already there in bold ink. Then pieces started clicking into place in her mind. There is someone else. She said it with sudden clarity. Is that what this is really about? Sterling's silence was answer enough. His jaw tightened again. Veronica Hayes. Marlowe continued, the fog of shock lifting slightly. Your new VP of Acquisitions. I saw how she looked at you at the company Christmas party. How you looked at her. She is healthy. Sterling said it like that justified everything. Like it was a perfectly reasonable explanation for abandoning his dying wife. Ambitious. She wants children. She understands what it means to be married to someone like me. Someone building something that matters. Someone like you. Marlowe repeated the words slowly. A coward who abandons his wife when she needs him most. That is who you are. Fire flashed in his eyes. The first real emotion he had shown since entering the room. I am not a coward. I am a realist. You are dying anyway, Marlowe. Why should I waste my prime years playing nursemaid when I could be living my life? When I could be building something with someone who has a future? You are dying anyway. The words hung in the air like poison gas. They would echo in Marlowe's mind for years. Would fuel her through the hell that came next. Would harden into something diamond sharp inside her chest. Get out. Her voice was stronger now. Fueled by rage that burned hotter than any fever. Get out of my room. Sign the papers, Marlowe. Be reasonable about this. Get out. A nurse appeared in the doorway, alarmed by the raised voices and the machines beeping frantically. Sir, you need to leave right now. You are upsetting the patient. Sterling straightened his tie. Smoothed his expression back to professional neutrality like putting on a mask. The papers are there when you are ready to be practical about this. About us. He left. Walked out of that hospital room and out of her life with the same cold efficiency he applied to business deals that no longer served his interests. Marlowe lay in that bed staring at the divorce papers and made a decision that would change everything. She was not going to die. The odds were astronomical. Stage 4 lymphoma had a 7% 5-year survival rate. Her oncologist, Dr. Patricia Walsh, was cautiously pessimistic when Marlowe asked about experimental treatments. Miss Ashford, I understand you want to fight this. But you need to be realistic about what stage 4 means. Everyone keeps telling me to be realistic. Marlowe said from her hospital bed. Her voice was weak but her eyes were not. I am done being realistic. Tell me about every option. Every clinical trial. Everything. Dr. Walsh studied her patient for a long moment. Then she pulled up a chair. All right. Let me show you what we are looking at. Marlowe had inherited her father's stubbornness along with his belief that justice eventually came for everyone. And she had something else now. Something Sterling had given her as a parting gift. Rage. Pure, clarifying, sustaining rage. She signed the divorce papers with a shaking hand. Took his settlement. Used every single penny of it to fight. Experimental treatments that were not covered by insurance. Clinical trials that required her to travel to other states. Procedures so brutal that some nights she wished for death just to make it stop. Her hair fell out completely. Her weight dropped to 90 pounds. She vomited until there was nothing left in her stomach but bile. She spent weeks so weak she could not lift her head from the pillow. Her body became a battlefield. But she survived. Month 6 came and went. The month she was supposed to die. Her tumors were shrinking instead. Month 12 brought partial remission. Month 18, full remission. By month 24, Dr. Walsh called it a miracle. Marlowe called it revenge. While Sterling lived his life without her, married Veronica Hayes in a splashy ceremony at the Drake Hotel that made the society pages, Marlowe rebuilt herself from nothing. She sold the townhouse he had so generously allowed her to keep in the divorce. Moved to a studio apartment in a building with no elevator. Started over completely. And she applied to law school. Northwestern University School of Law accepted her application. She paid for it with scholarships and student loans in spite. She studied 18 hours a day. While her body healed from the war it had fought, her mind absorbed everything. Constitutional law. Civil procedure. Legal writing. She devoured it all with the hunger of someone who understood that knowledge was power. Her classmates were mostly fresh out of college. She was 32 by then. They partied on weekends. She studied. They complained about the workload. She remembered being too weak to stand and pushed through. She graduated top of her class. Applied for a clerkship with a federal appellate judge who had known her father. Judge Morrison interviewed her in his chambers. "Your father was one of the finest jurists I ever knew," he said. "I see that same fire in you, Miss Brennan. What drives you?" "Justice." Marlowe replied simply. "I want to be someone who delivers justice to people who think they are above consequences." Judge Morrison hired her on the spot. 2 years as his clerk taught her how the federal courts worked. How judges thought. How to write opinions that would withstand appeal. She learned from one of the best. At 35, she applied to become a magistrate judge. At 36, she was appointed. At 37, exactly 8 years after Sterling Ashford had told her she was dying anyway, Marlowe Brennan took the oath as a United States bankruptcy judge for the Northern District of Illinois. She wore her father's judicial robe for the ceremony. The one he had died in. The one that still smelled faintly of his cologne if she buried her face in it. She sat on a bench and wielded power that Sterling, for all his billions, could never buy or influence or charm his way around. And she waited. Because Marlowe Brennan had learned something her father always knew. Everyone eventually faces consequences for their choices. Everyone eventually stands before a judge. Some people just take longer to fall than others. Now here is where justice starts catching up to people who deserve it. If you are loving this story of karma coming full circle, hit that like button right now. And I need you to comment, do you think she planned this or was it pure fate? Let me know what you think because this next part is incredible. Sterling Ashford's fall, when it finally came, was spectacular in its completeness. It started with the real estate market shifting beneath his feet like an earthquake. Interest rates climbed. The commercial properties he had bought at premium prices during the boom sat empty. Retail spaces that should have been printing money had for lease signs in the windows. His loans came due. Banks that had once courted him with phone calls and gifts now sent certified letters demanding payment. Then came the fraud investigation. It turned out that his VP of Finance had been cooking the books for years. Making properties look profitable when they were bleeding money. Sterling claimed total ignorance. The SEC was deeply unconvinced. Investors fled like rats from a sinking ship. Stock prices collapsed. The business magazines that had once featured him on their covers now ran articles about his downfall. And his marriage to Veronica ended exactly as it should have. She realized the money was gone. Filed for divorce before the ink dried on the SEC investigation. Hired attorneys even more vicious than Sterling's. Took half of what little remained in the settlement. The healthy woman who could give him children took those children and left the moment he could not afford the lifestyle she wanted. By the time Sterling Ashford filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, he was negative $47 million in debt. From $1.3 billion to negative $47 million in less than 3 years. It was almost impressive. The bankruptcy hearing was assigned by the court clerk's office. A computer algorithm selected the judge randomly from available dockets. Pure chance. Or fate wearing the mask of chance. Sterling sat in the federal courthouse waiting room on a Tuesday morning in March. His attorney, a nervous young associate from a firm that used to be too prestigious to take his calls, shuffled papers and avoided eye contact. "They will call us soon," the attorney said. His voice cracked slightly. Judge Brennan's clerk said we are next on the docket. Brennan. Sterling barely registered the name. Why would he? He had not thought about Marlowe in years. Occasionally he saw her father's name in old case law when his attorneys cited precedent. But Judge Samuel Brennan had been dead for over a decade now. It never occurred to him to connect that name to his dying ex-wife. The courtroom deputy appeared in the doorway. Ashford bankruptcy hearing. Judge is ready for you now. Sterling stood. Straightened his off-the-rack suit jacket. He had sold his entire custom wardrobe 6 months ago to pay legal fees. Walked into the courtroom with his attorney trailing nervously behind. The courtroom was smaller than he expected. Wood paneling on the walls. The seal of the United States mounted behind the bench. An American flag in the corner. Everything designed to remind you that you were subject to power greater than your own. All rise. The deputy's voice rang out with authority. The United States Bankruptcy Court for the Northern District of Illinois is now in session. The Honorable Judge Marlowe Brennan presiding. Sterling was standing already. His mind barely processed the name. His eyes were fixed on the door behind the bench as it opened. And then the woman he had left to die walked through it wearing the robes of a federal judge. You already know what happened next. That moment of recognition. His world stopping. Her complete indifference. What you do not know is what came after. She went through his finances with ruthless efficiency. Every failed investment. Every over-leveraged property. Every moment of hubris that had led him to this courtroom. Your purchase of the Michigan Avenue high-rise in 2019. She noted without looking up from her documents. You paid $43 million for a property assessed at $31 million. What was your reasoning, Mr. Ashford? Sterling swallowed hard. I believed the market would continue to appreciate. Based on what economic data? It was. He had no good answer. A calculated risk. A risk that failed spectacularly. She made a note with her pen. Costing your investors how much? Approximately $18 million. Approximately. She repeated the word like it disgusted her. Continue, counselor. It went on for over an hour. Every failure exposed under the harsh light of legal scrutiny. Every poor decision questioned. Every moment of arrogance revealed for what it was. Sterling sat there and took it because what choice did he have? She was the judge. He was the bankrupt defendant. The power dynamic had reversed so completely it took his breath away. Finally, she set down her pen. Looked at him directly for the first time since the hearing began. Mr. Ashford, I am going to appoint a trustee to oversee your remaining assets and the liquidation process. You will submit to regular financial reporting. All major decisions regarding your business or personal finances require court approval going forward. Do you understand these terms? Yes. It came out as a whisper. I did not hear you, Mr. Ashford. Yes. Louder now. Broken. Your Honor. Good. She shuffled her papers with brisk efficiency. We will reconvene in 30 days. I expect a full accounting of all assets at that time. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a crack that sounded like the closing of a coffin lid. All rise. Sterling stood on legs that shook. Watched as she gathered her files and stood. She was leaving. Walking away without acknowledging what they had been to each other. Without giving him anything. Wait. The word burst from him before he could stop it. Before his attorney could grab his arm. Judge Brennan paused at the door to her chambers. Turned slowly. Her expression could have frozen fire. Yes, Mr. Ashford. Is there something you need to add to the record? Can I? He looked at his attorney, who was frantically shaking his head. Can I speak with you privately? Just for one moment. Her eyebrows rose. You wish to speak to the judge presiding over your bankruptcy case privately. Are you aware that would be highly inappropriate and could result in sanctions against you and your counsel? Please. Marlo. The use of her first name hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Judge Brennan's jaw tightened. The first crack in her professional composure. That is Judge Brennan, Mr. Ashford. And no. You may not speak with me privately now or ever. If you have concerns about these proceedings, you may file them through proper channels with the court. Now if you will excuse me, I have a full docket. She walked through the door. It closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. Sterling stood in that courtroom, his attorney pulling urgently at his sleeve telling him they needed to leave, and understood with perfect clarity what had just happened. She had won. Completely. Utterly. Absolutely. She had survived when he said she would die. Had thrived when he abandoned her to her fate. Had become powerful beyond anything he could touch or influence or control. And she did not care. Did not care about his shock or his recognition or his regret. She looked at him and saw a case number. A file to be processed. A problem to be solved and forgotten. That was the cruelest cut of all. Not her anger. Not her revenge. But her complete and utter indifference to his existence. The bankruptcy proceedings dragged on for 18 months. Every single month, Sterling sat in that courtroom while Judge Marlo Brennan efficiently dismantled what remained of his life. She never showed bias. Never gave him anything his attorneys could use to file an appeal or request a recusal. Was perfectly, ruthlessly professional in every hearing. Which somehow made it worse. He tried once to approach her outside the courtroom. She was walking to her chambers, her clerk beside her carrying files. Judge Brennan. Please. I need to explain what happened back then. She stopped. Turned. Her face betrayed absolutely nothing. Mr. Ashford, you are represented by counsel. All communication regarding your case goes through proper legal channels. You know this. I was wrong. The words burst from him like water from a broken dam. What I did to you in that hospital. I was wrong. I am so sorry. She studied him like he was an interesting specimen under glass. Are you apologizing to your bankruptcy judge, Mr. Ashford? Because that seems strategically motivated given your current circumstances. No. He shook his head desperately. I am apologizing to my ex-wife. To Marlo. To the woman I left in that hospital bed. What she said next destroyed him more completely than any gavel ever could. Marlo Brennan died in that hospital bed 8 years ago. She said it quietly. With absolute finality. You made sure of that when you walked out. I am Judge Brennan now. And I have no interest in your apologies or your regrets or your explanations. You made your choice. Now you live with the consequences. She walked away. Left him standing there in the hallway. A security guard moved toward him, hand on his radio. Sterling left before he could be escorted out by force. Months later, when the bankruptcy was finally finalized, when every asset had been liquidated and Sterling Ashford was left with nothing but the clothes on his back and a studio apartment in a building with no elevator, he saw her one last time. He was leaving the courthouse after the final hearing. The one where everything was officially over. Where he was officially broke. She was leaving through the main entrance. A man waited for her on the courthouse steps. Tall, professorial-looking, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He handed her a coffee and she smiled. Actually smiled in a way Sterling had never seen in that courtroom. A smile that transformed her face. Made her look happy. Genuinely happy. They walked away together down the courthouse steps. Her hand in his. Her laughter carrying back on the spring breeze. And Sterling understood in that moment that she had not just survived. She had moved on completely. Built a life that had no space for him in it. Not as a husband. Not as a regret. Not even as a footnote in her story. He was simply nothing to her. Had been erased as thoroughly as he had tried to erase her 8 years ago in that hospital room when he said she was dying anyway. The dying woman he had abandoned had become a federal judge who held his fate in her hands and felt absolutely nothing. That was justice. Pure and absolute. Can we just take a moment to appreciate what just happened here? She did not need revenge. She did not plot or scheme. She just became so powerful that his downfall was inevitable when it came. If that is not the ultimate victory, I do not know what is. Smash that like button if you think she handled this perfectly. And let me know in the comments, would you have shown him mercy or done exactly what Judge Brennan did? So what does this story teach us? What can we learn from Marlo Brennan and Sterling Ashford? Lesson 1. How you treat people at their lowest moment defines who you truly are. Sterling revealed his real character when Marlo was dying. He abandoned her because she could not give him what he wanted anymore. He wanted a healthy woman who could stand beside him at galas and give him children. In the end, he got neither health nor children nor empire. His cruelty gave him nothing. Lesson 2. Your consequences are always waiting for you. It took 8 years but justice found Sterling Ashford. Everyone eventually stands before a judge. Sometimes literally. You cannot outrun what you have done. Time does not erase your choices. It just gives them space to grow into consequences. Lesson 3. The best revenge is becoming untouchable. Marlo did not plot against Sterling. She did not hire private investigators or sabotage his business. She focused on becoming powerful. She survived cancer with 7% odds. She put herself through law school. She earned a federal judgeship. She built herself into something he could never reach or influence. And when fate put him in her courtroom, she did not need to be cruel. She just needed to be professional. Lesson 4. Survival is the first victory but thriving is the second. Marlo could have stopped at just surviving the cancer. That would have been enough to prove Sterling wrong. But she did not stop there. She turned her tragedy into a law degree. Turned her pain into a judgeship. Turned her survival into a complete life transformation. She did not just live. She won. Lesson 5. Indifference is more powerful than anger. She did not rage at him in that courtroom. Did not gloat or exact petty revenge. She treated him like any other bankruptcy case. That indifference destroyed him more than hatred ever could. He wanted her to care. To acknowledge what they had been. She gave him nothing but legal proceedings and professional distance. Lesson 6. What you abandon will eventually haunt you. Sterling thought he was being realistic. Making a smart business decision about his life. Actually, he revealed himself as a coward who ran when things got difficult. And he spent the rest of his life knowing what he had destroyed. Knowing that the woman he left to die became someone extraordinary. Someone he could never have again. This is what happens when you count someone out too soon. When you abandon someone at their weakest moment. When you say someone is dying anyway, so why should you waste your time? Marlo Brennan was supposed to die 8 years ago in that hospital bed at Mercy General. She had stage 4 lymphoma. 6 months to live. 7% survival odds. Her husband looked at her dying body and said she was not good enough anymore. That he needed someone healthy. Someone who could give him the life he deserved. He walked out and married someone else. Lived his life like she had never mattered. But she did not die. She survived. She fought. She transformed. She became a federal bankruptcy judge with the power to make decisions that billions of dollars could not influence. And 8 years later, pure chance put Sterling Ashford in her courtroom. Bankrupt. Broken. Desperate. She looked at him from that bench and felt nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. Just professional indifference. She processed his bankruptcy with perfect legal efficiency. Appointed a trustee. Set reporting requirements. Scheduled follow-up hearings. And when he begged to speak with her privately, to explain, to apologize, she reminded him that she was Judge Brennan now. That Marlo Ashford had died in that hospital bed he abandoned. That was the truest victory. Not making him suffer. But genuinely not caring whether he suffered or not. Sterling Ashford spent the rest of his life knowing he had destroyed the only thing that ever really mattered. His empire crumbled. His second marriage ended. His reputation was ruined. He lost everything he thought made him important. Marlo Brennan spent the rest of her life never thinking about him at all. She had her judgeship honoring her father's legacy. She had someone who loved her for who she was. She had a life built on her own strength and determination. She won. He lost. One of them got exactly what they deserved. So here is what I need you to do right now. Subscribe to Mr. Stephen's Stories if you believe in justice catching up to people who deserve it. Like this video if Marlo Brennan is your new hero. Share this with someone who needs to remember that surviving is the best revenge. And comment below with the most important lesson you learned from this story. Remember these words. You are not defined by who abandoned you when you were weak. You are defined by who you became after they left. Marlo was told she was dying anyway. She became a federal judge instead. Sterling was worth $1.3 billion. He ended up with nothing. One of them got exactly what they deserved. And if you are going through hell right now, if someone has counted you out, if you have been told you will not make it, remember Judge Marlo Brennan. Remember that 7% odds are not zero. Remember that the person who abandons you might end up standing before you one day, powerless, while you hold all the cards. That is not revenge. That is consequence. That is justice. That is what happens when you underestimate someone's strength. I will see you in the next story. Stay powerful. Stay unstoppable. Stay winning.